Good afternoon, everybody. It's afternoon now. It's after 12 o'clock. I'm Chad Koulis, Executive Director of the Midway Chamber of Commerce, and we are so thrilled to be joined by a very special guest today. And before we get into introducing her, I'm going to turn it over to our board chair, Jameson Randall. Jameson.
Hello, everybody. Jameson Randall, board chair of the Midway Chamber of Commerce, where we're celebrating over 102 years of really creating a great place to live and work and play here in the Midway. Great to see everybody's smiley faces on the call today. And these things wouldn't be possible without our amazing sponsors. We'd like to thank Thunheim for their generous support today. And I'd like to turn it over to Emmett Coleman. Emmett Coleman is with us today. He is an independent public affairs consultant and strategic partnership with Thunheim. So Emmett Coleman, great to have you with us. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Jameson, and it's an honor today. I've had the pleasure of knowing Senator Klobuchar for many years now, and I can attest to the fact there's no substitute from hearing her directly talk about what's going on and the insights that she shares. Since arriving in the U.S. Senate, Amy Klobuchar has earned a reputation as an effective, results-driven legislator. She's willing to reach across the aisles to get things done for Minnesotans, and nothing's more important to her than that last point. As a member of the Senate Commerce Committee and co-chair of the Senate Entrepreneurship Caucus, I can't even pronounce that, Senator Klobuchar has led the effort to get new businesses and startups the support they need. She introduced the New Business Preservation Act, which would help promising new startups access the capital they need to survive. Senator Klobuchar has also been working to ensure Minnesota businesses get the support they need during these challenging times. Last year, Senator Klobuchar fought to expand the Paycheck Protection Program, led the effort to include funding for shuttered live entertainment venues, and pushed for additional funding to support businesses with debt relief. Throughout her time in Congress, Senator Klobuchar has been a true champion for Minnesota businesses and entrepreneurs. It is my honor to introduce Senator Amy Klobuchar today. Senator.
Well, thank you so much, Emmett. And it's great to see everyone. And thank you, Chad and Jameson, for your leadership. Looking forward to your questions. Actually, this is kind of an interesting backdrop for me. I got 10s from Room Rater. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. It's like this weird Twitter feed that rates what's behind you in your room. And at one point, I was in the president's room, which is a 150-year-old room in the Senate. It's beautiful setup. That's where Biden signed all the documents when he became president. I got to be in there with him. But they gave me a 10 for this older, I somehow made that room look like how it is. But now I'm actually at the Mayo Clinic. I'm doing an event in Rochester on misinformation on vaccines, which you as business leaders, I hope will help us to work on, so that when the vaccine becomes more available, and we know what an issue distribution is right now everywhere in the country, but we want to continue that message, even though it's still frustrating that not everyone can get it. I think it's really important that we keep having the message out there with especially business leaders, because honestly, when celebrities get it, whether it's Taylor Swift or Beyonce, when that happens, that's great. But people may care more when their barber gets it, someone was saying, or they may care more about when their employer in a small company gets it, to make them feel safe about it is really the goal. And so just something to keep in mind. It's on my mind because I'm down here at Mayo, and of course, they've been really a national leader when it comes to all this. So I wanted to focus on your stuff, which is what's going on with businesses. And I first want to thank you for what you've done through some really hard times, through what was happening in our state this summer after the murder of George Floyd, to what you've done through the pandemic with the distribution of $900,000 to struggling businesses through the We Love Midway Fund. And I want to thank you, and especially in your own individual businesses. Everyone have challenges. Not everyone's an Amazon that has, you're your own Amazons in your own way, but that has been able to add so much business. Some people have been able to make it through this. Some people have been really hurt, but everyone's been disrupted. I mean, we all have stories of employees that are going through really hard times, trying to keep their toddlers on their knees and their laptops on their desks, or teaching a first grader how to use a mute button just to read. We've got employees that long to be with each other and miss the community gatherings and everything else. In our office in the state, Rommel's on the phone here and could vouch for me on this. They had potluck lunches every Friday and these kinds of things. And I just think it's hard with customers and hard with your own employees and hard for yourselves right now. And part of this is acknowledging this, seeing this light at the end of the tunnel. We all know Biden administration just announced a purchase of 200 million additional vaccines, thanks to the hard work last year of so many scientists and people who've worked really hard to get this done. I was telling this to former Vice President Pence just the other day when I saw him at the inauguration. We talked for a long time. There was a lot of good work in developing that vaccine. And now the work needs to be, which many of you are experts at, done to distribute it and then to get the additional vaccines that we need. Testing is still going to be important. And continuing as we go through this transition. You saw the CDC guidance just this last week on opening schools, with strong suggestions that these schools get open, and how you can make them safe, kind of putting out a safe harbor there, which will be helpful for schools. And then the emphasis on vaccinating people in the school building, not just teachers, but also bus drivers and janitorial staff. And I just was on the phone with some of our rural superintendents yesterday, and a lot of their schools are almost there with having everyone who wants to be vaccinated. Just like you guys know, they still are running into 20% that won't get vaccinated. And so nevertheless, it just makes it a lot easier to open the schools, which not just helps our economy in the long term with kids not falling behind, but helps you with many of your employees who have been struggling with people at home or in your own lives. I think we all know the distribution issues. One of the vaccines require a freezer that's colder than the Pfizer, colder than the Baudette car testing plant up there. I've been there, so I happen to have been in that cold room. 103 degrees, minus 103 degrees, even colder than it is outside today, yes, is where these Pfizer vaccines have to be stored. Moderna is a little better in terms of the refrigeration, and what's coming down the pike with Johnson & Johnson with the one-shot vaccine, that will be almost like a flu vaccine for the limited requirements there are for how that's stored and how it's given. It's going to be so much easier, as well as AstraZeneca. So that's what's coming down the pike. I just actually got briefed by Dr. Fauci, not to drop names, yesterday, and Francis Collins, who's a good friend of Minnesota. He likes the work we've done at the U and at Mayo on human genome mapping and the work we've done, as well as the head of the CDC. It was just a Romney. There was just a smaller group of senators, and they were briefing us on the next variant and what's happening there. And I'm not telling you any secrets. You know that these are starting to spread across the country. So far, it looks fairly positive for how the vaccines have dealt with them. But I mean, their emphasis is we just can't at this moment stop wearing masks and start pretending like everything's just fine, because it won't be fine if we do that right away. We're going to have to keep being careful and sending that message in how we conduct ourselves in business and in government and the like. And they feel really strongly about that. So economically, we know what's been happening. We're down about 10 million jobs, nearly 200,000 in Minnesota. About 4 million workers are now classified as long-term unemployed. According to Brookings, and this is of course nationally, over 400,000 small businesses have closed. And Yelp had some similar studies that showed that. So that's really, really hard. And you know that's why we adopted the PPP early on. In the CARES Act way back in March and April. Obviously, there were some bumps in the road getting that out, but there have been some improvements made in the program. I actually just talked to former Treasury Secretary Mnuchin 2 days ago. We got to know each other well during all of this, and he valiantly kept pushing for bipartisan package last year. and didn't quite end up where we wanted. Actually, nothing in the summer, but we finally got something done at the end of the year. So what the next bill does after what we did at the end of the year and got some of the kinks out of that program and expanded the resources. The next plan, which is the current administration, the Biden plan, expands the PPP, including $15 billion for grants to small businesses, $35 billion in funding for small businesses, and $25 billion for restaurants. I think we all know in Midway area and beyond what we've seen with the restaurants. I personally put a major focus on small businesses, including the Save Our Stages Act, which got a lot of attention. There have been a lot of good bills that ended up on the cutting room floor overall, but especially during the pandemic. And no one thought this was going to go anywhere. But Senator Cornyn and I teamed up. Thank God for the country western bars and other places in Texas. And we had First Avenue, as well as many theaters, both in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we were able to, and as well as places like the Blue Stem Theater in Moorhead, that may be amphitheater that not everyone's aware of, but there were a lot of small towns that have like one music place that's really important to them, or one small theater like the Fargo Theater in North Dakota, allowing me to get Senator Kramer on the bill as an early sponsor. But we got that done on a bipartisan basis. We included zoos, museums, and so we actually got it up to $15 billion. Those grants are now, the program is starting up with career people. Obviously, the Biden people don't have most of their people in place yet, but over in Small Business Administration. And so we're kind of excited about that. Thing I'm working on right now is called the New Business Preservation Act that I've led. It actually came out, I don't know if any of you remember when Steve Case came to the Twin Cities and he did this race to the top thing where he would look at ideas for small startups and helping them get funded. And there's this huge issue right now about how all the venture capital, and we did a little better during the pandemic. We got up to number 12 in the country, our state, but so much of it, like over 80% of it is going to 3 places, right? To New York and Boston, of course, Silicon Valley, where most of it goes. And so the issue is to make sure it's getting spread around the country at other hubs, and we want to be one of them. And so it basically is federal money going to the states and invested not by the government, but by private to match with private. It has to be matched to help startups in other parts of the country. And so it's gotten a lot of interest. Senator Coons and Kane got on the bill right away. I talked to the White House about it at length, and they have money set aside in this next package. So that's something we're working on. Broadband, making sure that we have good access, high-speed access everywhere. We should have gotten this done a long time ago, and the pandemic has only shed a light on the problems there. I lead the bill that Clyburn is leading in the House. There's just absolutely no doubt we're going to get something done on broadband. We're going to get some done in this pandemic bill, but then there's going to be a major infrastructure bill. And we want to have broadband in that. And that's going to be coming up probably start right after we get this next pandemic bill passed. I have people that are in every agency now that have worked for me, including someone who headed up my leadership group. A lot of people don't know this. Her name's Laura Schiller. She was Boxer's chief of staff for 18 years. She is now Pete Buttigieg's chief of staff over in transportation. It's kind of ironic if anyone watched the debates. And Pete and I actually get along quite well. We've got my counsel that I brought to Washington, Jake Sullivan, is now President Biden's national security advisor. His brother, Tom, is Tony Blinken's top policy person. And there's more to come in the coming week, including someone that some of you know. My former ledge director, Ann Knappy, is going to be deputy confirmed by the Senate to Vilsack over in ag. And she's done a lot on nutrition programs, which matter for the Midway area. So I think beyond just these policy changes, it's going to be really exciting for the kind of access we're going to have for things that you guys care about to get to these agencies, and especially commerce, of which Gina, the governor of Rhode Island, and I have always gotten along really well, and as well as I know her deputy really well, and I've already invited him and her to come to Minnesota. And I'm on, as you know, I'm the second ranking Democrat on a huge committee over there, the Commerce Committee. So I just think there's some really exciting opportunities for all of you when things come up and there's individual questions you have about grants or what's happening, to go through our office. And Rommel's on the line, but also Kieran's on the line. Do you want to wave Kieran right there with a good St. Paul sounding name. And then we have on the line is Matt, who does our business work. Where's Matt? Are you on here somewhere? Do you want to say hi? Out of Washington, D.C., right there. And then Doug, our legislative director, actually had Matt's job before and did all our biggest business work and led the entire Senate effort on the Save Our Stages and got us 15 billion. So we feel like we're in a really good place to help you guys beyond big bills and what happens with legislation when you're trying to access resources from this new administration. So I wanted to make that pitch as well. So I'm ready to answer your questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much. A few questions for you. The Midway area and University Avenue in particular depend on small businesses. How can the federal government support small businesses, especially on commercial corridors and main streets across the country?
Well, I think a lot of it is what I went through here with the PPP, SBA debt relief, the Small Business Administration. I think we all know that it's not one size fits all, and you sure know that among yourselves. And so one thing we've learned in this pandemic is you've got to, as we've gotten now toward the end, what I believe will be toward the end, is that we need to make sure we're helping the ones that need it. I still remember Sunrise Bank telling me early on about calls that they got targeting them from some law firm in another state, wanting PPP money early on. I mean, there's just a bunch of things that happened that were bad early on. And I think we have control of that now. And the resources should go where they need to go. And that includes our restaurants primarily. There's issues with gyms that we're trying to help. There were, as I mentioned, the stages, they were the first to close. They'll be the last to open. Manufacturing, it just depends on where you stand. Some people have seen increases. A lot of them have seen decreases. The costs of trying to get your business retrofitted in a way to allow for you to operate going forward. There were expenses with that. And then, of course, some of these issues I led with, which is just your employees and trying to get them back to work and some of them working at home. And then there's going to be this transition, which I know we're in the middle of it ourselves. It's going to be, there's going to be a lot of lessons learned from each other, I think, is about safety, but it's also about their individual situations. If they've got someone with a pre-existing at home and they don't have the vaccine yet, what do you do then? You've got kids that are still not in school and they're at home with them. I just think it's going to be a lot of patience and then trying to figure out what other businesses are doing and what's working and what's not working as we go through the transition, because we've learned a lot of great things that people can work at home, that. But we also, a lot of us would like to have employees back in the workplace safely, so we can, go back to functioning more as a team. And I think that's right, Rommel? Oh, he's muted. They muted him. He can't say yes. I assume you mean yes, Rommel.
Yep. I'm unmuted now. So yes, sorry about that.
So, I think that's on everyone's mind. But I think that as we go forward, getting the package out there is important. Trump's former head of economic council, Kevin Hassett, fully supports what Biden's doing. A bunch of Republican governors and mayors support what he's doing. There was just a big article out in I think it was Washington Post about it. And then you've got the Moody's estimated it would add 7 million jobs. That all being said, as we get through this, we know that we won't be able to keep giving these huge packages out because, we want the economy to get on its feet. But the last thing we want right now is economy start plummeting. We want to be in a good place to to jump back when this is over, and we want you to be in a good place. So I think there's differences between Democrats and Republicans. Dumbest thing I said on the whole call, but there are differences in the amount of money on this. And that's really all it is. Even most Republicans acknowledge we need to do more money right now, based on what the head of the Federal Reserve has said and other people. So, so that's what we're doing right now. And I do view, I mean, you saw me at the inauguration, Roy Blunt and I did that whole thing together. And it was this most amazing moment where to see everyone up there from Mike Pence to George Bush after that insurrection. And I said what I meant. This is a moment where our democracy can dust itself off and rise up again and move forward as a country. And that's a lot of what Biden's saying. And honestly, even through the impeachment hearing, even through everything we went through, there are a lot of Republicans who have been working well with us on getting all these things confirmed, all these nominees for Biden confirmed. Yellen's in, Dennis McDonough, Minnesota native, Stillwater native is in as Veterans Affairs. Buttigieg is in, Defense Department is in, Secretary of State is in. I think we're about halfway done, and the other ones have been going pretty well. It's not because it's just time. So you got to remember that. That's pretty important. And Biden's put some good people in. So it just feels like a kind of a new day in terms of people wanting to work together. And even though the vote on this package may be more partisan in the end, it just doesn't feel like some knockdown, drag out fight going on over pandemic relief. Everyone knows we have to do some. Okay.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned manufacturing, because the industrial sector is really important in the history of the Midway. It still is, but there's threats to it. We have the saying that a lot of the industrial land gets converted to coffee houses and condos, which we like our condos, we like places to live, we like drinking coffee, but it's a threat to the industrial sector. So do you have any thoughts on how we can help preserve and continue to have a maintaining or a thriving manufacturing sector?
Yeah, so okay, start with good news. Good news is during the pandemic, I think people have started to realize how making things in America is so critical. We just can't depend on foreign countries for all our own stuff. And one of the reasons that while the vaccine has been rocky in getting it distributed, one of the reasons that we're ahead of some other places, I was just reading about Canada actually, is because we're making stuff in our own state. It's that simple, and not in our own state, in our own country. And all of that is true for so much of our manufacturing in Minnesota. We've lost about 500,000 manufacturing jobs nationally. And as you know, years ago, there were some people writing off manufacturing. And I don't think that is borne out to be true. We're really lucky in Minnesota to have such a diverse manufacturing base with small and large companies, to have companies that do manufacturing in Minnesota, like 3M. They obviously do it other places as well, or Polaris or Articat. I'm just thinking of all of them. Now I'm going to leave out all the Midway ones, I'm sure. But we have big companies and we have little companies. And it's been this kind of manufacturing ecosystem that's worked really, really well for us. Medtronic, our medical device industry, our food manufacturing, big time. Has made such a difference. So I think that there are few things. One, we've got to continue to go with the idea that we should be making things in America, something that Biden, as you know, embraces. It was his lead plan on Build Back Better. And so I think that that's going to be really important. That's things like my Removing Incentives for Outsourcing Act, this idea that we do everything we can to try to keep a lot of manufacturing in America. And then the second piece of it is what I mentioned, continuing to replenish capitalism, basically by investing in entrepreneurship, by not letting it all be in one place. Some of the antitrust work I'm doing, I don't know if you've seen any of this, this is quite amusing, but our antitrust laws really have been stacked in the last few decades in favor of big and against smaller businesses coming up. And that's most illustrated in tech in a big way. And traditionally, this was a Republican thing. Teddy Roosevelt and Senator Sherman of the Sherman Act was Republican from Ohio because it was seen as a way to support entrepreneurship and inventors and new ideas. And so we have to make quite an overhaul to those laws. And that's something that actually Grassley and I have a bill that's pretty significant to invest in agencies. So that's something else to think about. STEM, everything you've been most likely doing with kids and trying to robotics and trying to get them interested in manufacturing, that we've done all over our state, so we can get the next new Post-it note or the next new pacemaker coming out of Minnesota again. And I think that's going to be a lot of it as well. And then respecting small businesses as we get through the pandemic, which I think we've been trying our best to do. I know not well enough, but with the PPP and everything that we've been doing along with that.
Thank you. As we get out of the pandemic and more employers start hiring again, we do have to face reality that some jobs aren't coming back. For many Americans, this will mean finding a new industry and a new skill set. How do we address this pending skills gap and help prepare our people for a new job?
Well, what's really weird is, I'm sure some of you know, we even have it now during the pandemic. We still have, with so many people unemployed, there's still openings, especially in advanced manufacturing and other things across our state. And so to me, it means, and I love this issue just because it's like a sort of a positive issue to work on. It starts with schools and making sure that our curriculums and elementary on are geared toward the jobs we think we're going to have. And as I said many times on the presidential debate stage, we're not going to have a shortage. I don't know who I'm going to piss off by using this one, but we're not going to have a shortage of sports marketing degrees or even MBAs actually in the next decade. We're going to have a shortage of people on the manufacturing line. We're going to have a shortage of plumbers. We're going to have a shortage of electricians. So when you know that going in, how do you get kids to go into these careers? And a lot of it is how we handle this in middle school and high school. And you've probably heard about some of these academies that are going on in the metro, but also in greater Minnesota. There's some amazing high schools. You literally walk in Alexandria and all the equipment's there. So there's like 3 different curriculums that kids are following in the high school. The idea of emphasizing community college, and you've got such a great one in St. Paul, and tech and these kinds of things as options for kids, because it's not everyone wants to go to a 4-year degree right away. And so it's part of that. It is allowing employers and giving them tax credits and finding ways to create incentives to make it easier for employees that you have now to get the training, including online. Now that's going to be a lot easier, right? With all these Zoom classes and stuff, there's just going to be more advanced techniques used to educate the kids, not necessarily kids. Some of them are older employees. And some of the older employees have now learned how to do all this, which has been another silver lining with all of this, including my own in-laws who are in their 70s, who sadly discovered Zoom for my husband's birthday in October. And then at the very end realized there was the gallery function, and they have 6 sons and they didn't want to end the call. So we had to go another half hour because they were only seeing the people who were talking. And then we went into Thanksgiving, and that got like into a 2-hour situation. And so, but my point is, a lot of people are learning how to use this. So you guys know it'll help you for, remote meetings and things you're doing, but it's also going to help you for training employees, both with your own curriculums, but then working with the community colleges and the like. And what we should be doing as Washington is encouraging that. That's why Senator Tim Scott, who is a Republican senator from South Carolina, and I have teamed up to do this entrepreneurship caucus. It's a lot about that kind of stuff and how you help. Our whole focus is small businesses, obviously. And how we help them. So those are just some of my ideas. I'm sure you have others, and I know we'll hear from Chad and Jameson and from Emmett about those ideas to our staff as we go into this next legislative session. But we have an opportunity here with what's happening to really remake some of the training that's going on in our schools, mostly because I think, as I mentioned about this transition time, it's going to become more and more apparent where these gaps are with employees. There's going to be a lot of people that have been moved around because of this pandemic, and there's opportunities, but there's also scary things of not having enough employees, especially in retail, when things start opening up again, and in restaurants and the like. And then that hurts other kinds of businesses if they're grabbing the other employees. So I think you all know how that all works, as you've, I'm sure, lost employees to bigger entities. So.
Well, thank you. Another, sorry about that. Another question for you, a little bit more of a fun one. You mentioned inauguration. We saw you up there on stage, and right on cue, of course, it starts snowing on you. I'm sure that was planned. You were part of the planning committee for the inauguration. That's pretty cool. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, so it was actually Blunt and I actually ran that whole inauguration, and then there was a committee that also included McConnell and Pelosi and Hoyer and Kevin McCarthy. So that was it. And interestingly, because of the way the Senate worked, Schumer wasn't on the committee. It's just because we were in the minority at the time when we were planning it. So what happened was we had a lot to deal with. It was unbelievable because we had the pandemic. We had to make decisions before we even knew the winner of the election. And then when we knew that, of course, we worked with the Biden people. And we had to plan who was speaking and how we were doing it. And then we were the ones in charge of the Electoral College. So at 4 a.m, it was just Blunt, Pence, and me that were walking with the 2 kids with the mahogany box over to the House after that insurrection. So after that, it made it even crazier because there were a lot of people that wanted to not have the inauguration. They wanted to do it in a bunker. Even the Star Tribune editorialized to do that. And I just thought that was the worst. We were listening to the Secret Service. We were doing everything the Defense Department wanted. And the truth is you would have needed huge security if Joe Biden got inaugurated in a bunker. But our nation needed to be courageous enough to show that we were taking back that space of the Capitol, because it was on that very platform in the media thing that they had first hit. There was literally still spray paint at the bottom of the columns while Biden was being inaugurated. All the windows had been broken out behind there, and the media platform, which goes several stories, had almost toppled down. So that's what we were facing. And that's why it was literally, you felt like the democracy was on your shoulders and that we had to go forward. And the President Biden felt very, very strongly about it as well. So we were all united on that. But it was so many people were afraid. And I still remember the feeling when, okay, I got to talk to Lady Gaga, and that's a whole nother story. But I was sitting there, and in the sky, this blue sky, and Garth Brooks was singing Amazing Grace, and it was like this religious experience. And I looked up at the sky and I thought to myself, I won't say what senators, but in my mind, I'm like, no, Senator blank, nothing is coming and hitting us from that sky. Okay, that is not happening. And so there was just a lot of that going on. And then like George Bush was so great to me afterward, and they were just everyone was really happy with how it went, including all the Republicans. So it was something I'll never forget, and I was really proud of what Roy and I did together and how we resisted a lot of really bad ideas. And we had that incredible poet, of course, and everything. And as I said, we've never before had J-Lo be a warm-up act for Chief Justice Roberts, but that's what happened. So it was just a really beautiful thing. And the snow was so weird. It was 40 degrees. I still don't understand why it snowed. So I viewed that as like a really good sign. And then it got even warmer, but it was 40 degrees when it snowed. So I cannot explain why that happened the minute I started walking down, but that was my day. So.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for spending some of your day today with us. I know that your schedule is very tight and you have to go. So if you have any last quick parting words for us.
Well, just to keep up your strength here. I know how hard this has been, because a lot of my friends own small businesses in Minnesota and in other parts of the country. And just the toll it takes on people who are really running things and trying to do your best is really hard. So I want to thank you for hanging in there and for staying together as a group, and then helping other businesses with that fund that you put together. Because I think you understand that the Midway area, you can't just have, if you let half the businesses go, it affects everybody. And so I know you get that, and that's why you're trying to help each other. And I really do see this light at the end of the tunnel here, and people starting to feel better about our country and where we're headed. And I hope you feel that too, because I feel that from you, even on your Zoom screen with Bruce with his cool background. I don't know what he's got there. He's got a bunch of fall leaves or something going on. And all your smiling faces help me to get through. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Senator. And for those of you who had asked questions and we didn't get a chance to have the Senator answer them, Rommel and others from her staff have been paying attention to that, and they will be able to respond. So thank you for asking those questions. And at this point, Jameson, I want to turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, there, I got it. All right, thank you again, Senator. And this was such a great program. And, thanks again to our sponsor, Thunheim, and board member Emmett Coleman for helping us set this up. This is just part of the great programming that we've been having and will continue to have. I'm really excited. We got, if you want to know about how to get your website up to today's standards, you don't want to miss an upcoming event that we have. Make your website work for you on February 24th. And if that's not your gig, let your company know, whoever's in their marketing department. This is a not to miss event. Of course, we have our annual celebration coming up. And we don't get to be in person, but our annual celebration is our biggest fundraiser of the year. It's going to be professionally produced. You do not want to miss this event. That's on February 25th. Pick your favorite urban growler, your favorite microbrew, and join us for that happy hour event. It's only an hour. You're gonna not regret missing that. And then we have International Women's Day coming up, 50 Ways to Fight Bias on March 8th. Encourage you to sign up for that. And our economic development meeting featuring Reconnect Rondo Land Bridge on March 9th. So some fabulous programming, always great seeing every one of you. And I know we'll be implementing some live events as we're allowed to do so, and we did some very safe events throughout the year. So keep it up. The thing I got today is we're all helping each other out. We're all working together, and that's what we're here for. So thanks again for being a part of this amazing event.
Thanks, everybody.